Welcome to the Drill Down, in-depth answers to oilfield questions. I'm John Spears.
And I'm Richard Spears.
Richard, I've been thinking of the phrase, Robert gave Richard a rap in the ribs for roasting the rabbit so rare. Yes, an alliterative phrase from way back in the day, right? And I bet you're wondering why I'm thinking of it.
I know what the alternative phrase to that one was.
Which would be?
Bob gave Dick a poke in the side for cooking the bunny so...
Too much.
Too much,
yeah. No,
Now, why are you thinking of this?
Well, because
I have no
in the news, in the oilfield news last couple weeks, have been a couple of mergers which strike me because they are so alliterative. We've been talking about Conoco and Concho.
Got it.
Right?
Those would be the letters C-O-N.
Right. And, of course, the more recent news is, I guess, about Paisley.
Paisley. Yeah, we're going to call them Paisley. No, Parsley and Pioneer.
Pioneer, yes, absolutely, P&P. So,
yeah.
That's
how we're choosing who needs to go together.
Yeah,
Exxon and
that's
EOG.
that's the thought. But anyway, the point being that I think it's worthy for us to talk a little bit about these mergers because there's a couple of interesting implications that I think come from these actions.
Well, yeah, because what you and I have been part of this family business since we were puppies.
Yes.
55 years or something.
Yeah, right.
And what Dad discovered in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and what we discovered in the 90s and the 2000s, 2010s, and now, the pattern repeats itself, which is when somebody buys somebody else, what happens?
Well, you begin to consolidate those supply chains, and the buyer gets to choose who they keep using to drill their wells and work on their wells and things like that.
Let's say that again.
The buyer gets to choose.
The buyer gets to choose.
Yeah. So we have some numbers and some stats about that. But before we get into that part of the discussion,
because we're going to actually say winners and losers.
We will, yeah. But what strike me as interesting is that, what do these mergers say about future activity? One of the questions that I've been getting asked is,
you mean like drilling activity?
Drilling activity, rig count, capital spending, and so forth.
Okay.
So does this mean more? Does this mean less that might go on if the mergers hadn't taken place, right? So, one of the things is that the mergers we've talked about here are all cashless. They're all stock exchanges. So there's no big debt being taken on by somebody. It's not the situation.
Nobody's walking away with $1 billion.
Yeah, right. Or $1 billion on their balance sheet, right? I mean, it's not the Oxy Anadarko, Michigas from a couple of years ago. That's the case. So there would be the potential for money to go into capital spending because there's not this big debt overhang that needs to be serviced, right? But I think, if you're going to do a deal, do a merger, I think that says that both parties have some degree of confidence, or perhaps increasing confidence, about what the future, might hold.
If I'm going to sell my company to you,
right,
and I'm not going to take any money off the table,
right,
then you and I
if I'm going to buy your company, right,
we're both going to bet that tomorrow's a rosier day, and that we together are stronger, faster, jump taller buildings.
There we go, all those kind of things, yeah. So maybe it's not even a rosier day, but just some of the uncertainty about the future begins to sort of evaporate. So you think about, big uncertainties. What's the price of oil going to be, right?
I don't know what.
Yeah, but that's one of those things that these parties all have to think about.
Right.
So where might oil prices settle going forward over the next 2, 3, 4 years? There's an election. What does the uncertainties around that? What problems might that pose? Are they manageable? Are they, so forth? So, I think that these mergers speak to the fact that, the uncertainty around some of these big issues is probably in the minds of these guys, resolving itself into a situation where they feel pretty comfortable making some decisions.
I see. So I'm going to control the things I can control,
right,
and limit the number of things I can't control, but at least I can say what they are.
Right, yeah.
And I know what they are. It's the knowable unknowns.
There you go, right. And, of course, if you merge, then you have a chance to improve the financial condition of the combined companies. And so all that's, within the control of the management largely. So,
for example,
yeah.
whenever, let's just take a look at when Conoco bought Concho, or is in the process of, Conoco is a very good client of ours.
Yeah.
Is Concho a client of ours?
To some degree, in and out.
So there you go. One of those subscriptions is going to get canceled.
Probably right.
So they'll be able to cut our cost in half.
Yeah.
By just making it the Conoco subscription.
Right. I gotcha. Right. So your point being...
This is not, by the way, a recommendation. You can get twice as much love from the Spears family.
So what would your analysis say about something like, specifically about Concho and Conoco?
Well, so what because of our friends over at our sister company, Oilfield Logics, I had them do the following exercise when we saw this whole thing unfolding.
Right.
And I said, give me every well that's been drilled in the United States over the last 12 months.
Okay.
And then put on to every one of those wells who is a drilling contractor.
Okay.
By the way, we get that information from Inveris.
Right. Okay.
It used to be Drilling Info. We get that. So we got that. But tell me who the cementer was on every one of their wells.
Yeah, gotcha.
Who was the directional driller on those wells, and who was the frac guy on those wells.
So rigs, directional. Okay,
and,
gotcha.
And you can get drilling fluid on some of them, but those are kind of the big categories. Because I wanted to see how alike are the supply chains on each one of these deals, or how different are they?
How different they are. Yeah.
Because here's what I discovered.
Yes.
So you take Conoco and Concho.
Okay. Right.
Geographic overlap.
Right.
Because Conoco's kind of everywhere. They're also in Alaska.
Yes, right.
But Concho is pretty much West Texas, South Texas. That's where we are. They're a Texas company or a Permian company.
Yeah.
So there's some geographic overlap there.
Absolutely, right.
Concho, if you take if you're looking online, if you're watching us on the webcam, you can see they've got 10 drilling contractors they rely on. Concho does.
Wow. Okay.
They've got independent cementers they rely on, Compass and Crest.
Okay.
They've got independent directional drillers who they rely on.
Okay.
They've got,
and by independent, you're talking about the guys who are not part of big diversified service firms.
Not necessarily.
Gotcha.
So they've got Leam and they got Phoenix and they got this Gordon technology thing that's going on with MWDs. But here's Concho that for most of the things that they do are very reliant on independent service companies.
I understand. Right.
They got Helmerich and Payne in the contractor category. They got Ensign in the contractor category.
That's one bigger.
But they got a bunch of independents.
Right.
Look at Conoco.
Let me guess. Mostly the major service firms are their supply chain.
Just start with the contractors.
Yeah.
They rely mostly on Neighbors and Helmerich and Payne.
Okay.
Hard to get any bigger than the two biggest land They've got Ensign in there. They got Patterson in there, but that's it. Over on cementing, Halliburton and BJ.
So we see a marriage of the two families are bringing different, much different, traditions to the table here. Right.
They've got one area where they both agree.
Right.
Halliburton fracks the wells of both families.
Right.
Largely.
So again,
everywhere else though, I got independents on this side.
Right.
Major service companies on this side. But Conoco is the buyer here.
Yeah, right.
So what happens?
Yeah, we would say that they get to choose and probably will go with the guys they know the best.
Yeah.
So if I was some of the firms that had been handling the Concho account, you'd be a little bit nervous, right?
High alert.
Okay, so can we talk about a different merger and get maybe a different kind of a story?
Yeah, because the thing about Concho and Conoco is they are combining a region.
Right.
They're both in a region.
Common geographical footprint.
And
but different operating styles. Gotcha.
You bet.
Yeah.
So here's another one that's already been announced with Devon acquiring WPX.
Right.
Tulsa-based WPX. We're waving goodbye to the WPX guys. That's a lovely building in Oklahoma City. They're going to have a great time filling it back halfway full.
There you go.
But in that particular case, you have WPX working in this area.
Which is with the Bakken, if I recognize where your hand
is. It's the Bakken and in Texas.
Yes.
And you've got Devon in New Mexico and Wyoming.
Okay, Wyoming, Texas. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
so even though we have some Permian overlap,
right?
One's the New Mexico Permian and one's the Texas Permian.
I gotcha.
They're far enough away
that
when you look at what those two companies do and the service companies that they rely on, it's pretty much independent of each other.
Understand. So there may not be much consolidation going on.
Yeah.
But the issue there would be just, do the service firms that Devon uses also have offices in some of these other places where WPX is working? That would be an issue, for example.
But when I look at, the drilling contractors are Cactus and Neighbors and Cactus is, of course, Patterson.
Yeah.
But so you've got the big service companies, big drilling contractors. They use big cementers. They use big frac companies.
Yeah.
And then they use any number of directional drillers.
Okay.
So that one, even though it's a merger, it probably doesn't have much impact on the service sector. However,
to the extent then that they get cost rationalization, it would be a back office event more so than a in the field volume discount kind of thing. I gotcha. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Over in New Mexico, it's kind of a subset of service companies, and that's their territory.
Gotcha.
So they're not going to try to make the Wyoming guys use New Mexico.
Yeah,
folks.
I understand. Yeah.
But then you come across the one that was announced this week.
Right.
Parsley Pioneer.
Right.
Alliteration. This is the alliteration podcast.
Right. What does this tell you?
These guys are in this.
So again, same areas, right?
Same region.
Right.
Pretty much West Texas, South Texas.
Common geographical footprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any commonality with their supply chain?
Well, if all you do is look at the drilling contractor, that's safe because get this, they both are heavily reliant on Ensign. They're both heavily reliant on H&P, and they're both heavily reliant on Patterson.
Okay.
So no change there.
Yeah, I see. Right.
Now, Independence is working for Parsley. So, but on the contractor side, they use the same folks. If they're going to drill a well, it's going to be somebody in that category. Oh boy, does it fall apart in the cementing side. Let me just give you the Parsley, Compass, Next Tier, Transtex, and the big one, Halliburton. But Halliburton's not a big cementer that we can tell for Parsley.
Right.
Over on the Pioneer side, Crest, Permian 5, Schlumberger, and some of their wells are cemented by Halliburton.
Something tells me that the procurement departments are going to have a lot of work ahead of them.
In the cementing department.
Yeah, right.
Then, good luck on the directional side.
Oh, yeah.
I think they both use everybody, but they're just a huge list of directional drillers that they each use. The one overlap that I can find is QES.
Okay. So
QES is a directional driller, works for both of them, but everybody else is
I just see a big brawl going on here.
Exactly. You get the supply chain guys all together.
Yeah, right.
Last people standing. That's who you use. And over on the frac side, hard to say because Pioneer had a frac company. Yeah. They sold it to ProPetro, and so there's this.
But the interesting thing there is that not only are there differences between those two companies and the suppliers they use, but none of the suppliers appear to have dominant market shares within their categories.
No.
Directional drilling or whatnot, right? So there's
they're independent. They're unaffiliated with multiple business unit, multiple product line kind of companies.
So here's an interesting point. So this obviously has impact directly on suppliers of these firms. A picture that comes to my mind from this is that we know that as oil companies get bigger, they tend to prefer using other big oil service firms, right? The big guys, the major operators like to use the largest service firms.
It was true when Dad started this company. It was true when we joined the company. It's true today.
In 5 years when the last oil barrel is produced.
The last one big oil company, one big service company. It'll be Schlumberger.
So the point is that as a Pioneer and Parsley get together and become a bigger company, will they begin to act more like a bigger company? Because right now they're sort of acting like the classic independent oil companies.
They are.
But
and the reason why we got so many independent service companies out there right now, why do we have 45 frac companies? Why do we have 145 directional companies?
Right.
It's because we couldn't get services for a 10-year period.
We're coming out of a period of time where availability was a real issue. And so that gave an opportunity for small service firms of a variety of markets to jump in and grab work, generally speaking, from small operators. Right,
because they were the ones, small operators, were the ones who couldn't offer a huge multiple-year contract to Halliburton.
So they were getting the phone call last
Yeah.
In terms of, hey, I got
it. So I'm going to put you,
yeah.
Bob, into the directional drilling business.
So as these mergers take place, and I'm guessing that this week won't be the last of the merger that we might hear about.
This day won't be the last one.
I think we'll see more of these going on. So obviously this supply chain consolidation issue rationalization is going to be an ongoing, a rolling event. But this will mean that there'll be, when the dust settles, fewer but bigger companies, oil companies around. And this is going to have an implication for market share,
fewer,
on the service
bigger oil field service companies. Right. Our colleague Dave Hutchison, Houston, our partner in Houston, Texas. This Friday, he's going to be at the NOV reveal of their new electric frac fleet.
Oh, okay.
And I think Dave's going to give a little talk while he's down there. Yeah. And one of the questions he's going to answer is the frac industry bifurcating right now? And if you don't know what the word bifurcating means,
hit pause, go find out.
And then come right, but we'll wait. But is it bifurcating? Because the NOV leadership group was going, I think, is there big guys and little guys? And the answer is, based upon this, yes. That's a short answer.
So that's the other thing, too. There may be some losers come out of this in terms of guys who get the phone call that says, listen, we're going the other direction with whomever, right? And some of those guys may be even big company. But the point is that as big companies emerge, then this will ultimately benefit the big service companies. They may lose out on a deal where two companies get together and they'll be on the outside, but there'll be other big companies emerge, and this will give them a chance to recapture some of that. I think some of their share, some of their business. So there's sort of short-term implications and longer-term implications for the service guys as well.
Well, and just to sort of put a little bow on this, the little anecdote is, back in 1981, I left a perfectly good field engineering job at Halliburton, convinced you to come back from Michigan, and we bought some acidizing pump trucks and went into business in Enid, Oklahoma as a little bitty frac service company, acidizing service company, working for those independent oil companies who couldn't get Halliburton to come over and do anything for them.
Right.
And we had a really good first month.
And when your clients go out of business, it's tough to stay
right, because we were working for that one oil company. That we had, 10 oil companies who couldn't. They ran out of money, and then therefore we ran out of money. And that same story is repeated 10 times since then in our careers.
So, we'll keep an eye on things. I'm sure the merger world will keep rolling down the road. And as it does, I think we should, start thinking about what kind of names that these new combined companies should get. I mean, over in some parts of the world, you have other alliterative names like Coca-Cola, Dunkin' Donuts, Krispy Kreme, just to think a few that come to my mind. So
we're going to have a Dunkin' Donuts oil company. That's a great idea.
Alliteration as the newest thing in the oil patch. Why not? Anyway, thanks so much for listening. This has been The Drill Down. I'm John Spears.
And I'm Richard Spears.